Hello, I'm Katherine Kasdorf, Associate Curator of Arts of Asia and the Islamic World at the Detroit Institute of Arts. I'd like to take you to the Padma and Raj Vattikuti and Family Gallery, the DIA's gallery for Indian and Southeast Asian art. This gallery features many types of art, including sculptures, paintings, and textiles, grouped according to different themes. In this video, we'll be visiting a section of the gallery that features sculptures of Hindu gods and goddesses. In developing this part of the gallery, we wanted to show visitors that Hindu sculptures like these are more than just beautiful works of art. They provide believers with multiple ways to access and connect with the infinite divine. Each one is believed to embody the presence of the god or goddess it depicts, providing a very real connection to divinity. The Hindu pantheon includes multitudes of gods and goddesses, but there's also a belief in divine unity, that all of these gods and goddesses are ultimately one universal divine being, who is infinite and beyond comprehension. To become more accessible to people, the universal divine being manifests as specific gods and goddesses with form that you can see, touch, and worship in tangible ways. At the center of this wall, we see Ganesha, the beloved elephant-headed god. This sculpture is on loan to the DIA from Padma and Raj Vattikuti. Ganesha is known as the remover of obstacles, and believers pray to him at times of transition, such as starting a new job or entering a new home. Images of Ganesha often appear near doorways, offering protection across thresholds. Here, he greets us as we enter this gallery. Now, I want to point out the graphic on the wall next to this Ganesha on the left. It's subtle, but if you look at it from just the right angle, you can see lines of text in different scripts. This text repeats the word darshan in different South and Southeast Asian languages, and in English. Darshan essentially translates as looking, and in a Hindu context, it refers to a very specific act of looking at a god or goddess, a kind of sacred eye contact. In a religious setting, gods and goddesses are believed to be present within the images that depict them, images like these sculptures. When you look at a god or goddess through its image then, and especially when you look into the eyes, that god or goddess also looks at you. The gaze is reciprocal. Whatever the specific setting for a devotional image, in a big temple, a small shrine, a moving procession, or a private home, darshan is central to the way believers engage with that image. Stone sculptures would have been stationary in the temples they were made for. People would need to go to the temple to see them. But metal images, like the two sculptures in this part of the gallery, were made for festival processions, where gods and goddesses would emerge from the temple, making themselves accessible to believers in the surrounding city, village, or countryside. Other sculptures, like this small metal image of the infant god Krishna, may once have been in somebody's home. A video in the gallery shows some examples of Hindu worship in these different settings. Now, darshan is one way in which believers connect with gods and goddesses through devotional images like these sculptures. Another way to connect with a god or goddess is through acts of worship, which are also directed toward devotional images. Whether in a temple or shrine, or in a home, these acts of worship involve offering the deity pleasing things like flowers, fruit, sweet-smelling incense, light from lamps, music, and words of praise. Sometimes, people will also bathe a sacred sculpture in scented water, milk, or other pleasing substances. And after bathing it, they dress the sculpture in fine cloth and adorn it with beautiful jewelry. These are all considered offerings made to honor the god or goddess the sculpture embodies. Remember, during the time of worship, the actual god or goddess is believed to be present within the image. So, in directing praise or offerings toward a sculpture, people aren't worshiping that sculpture. They're worshiping the god himself, or the goddess herself, in a very direct way. Now, I've already mentioned that there are a lot of gods and goddesses in the Hindu pantheon. While believers recognize the divinity of all these deities, most Hindus worship a particular god or goddess as most important. The three most prominent are the god Vishnu, the god Shiva, and the supreme goddess, who is known by many names, including Shakti, which means power, or Devi, which means goddess or queen. Each of them, Vishnu, Shiva, and the goddess, has particular characteristics. Each one also takes on many different forms. Vishnu is known as the preserver of cosmic order. In this sculpture, made for a temple in central India in the 900s, he stands like a pillar of stability, holding a mace, a weapon he uses to combat evil. Vishnu is often represented with the crown and jewelry of a king, as he is here, because human kings too are tasked with maintaining order. Now, there's a lot going on in this sculpture. There are a lot of smaller figures surrounding Vishnu. Let's just take a look at the ones in the upper register. Along the top, we see a series of figures representing 10 different forms of Vishnu, called avatars. In Hindu belief, Vishnu descends to earth in times of crisis in order to restore balance to the universe. Each time, he takes on a form appropriate to the challenge, a particular avatar. For example, eons ago, when 4 foundational sacred texts, the 4 Vedas, were in danger of being lost in the ocean, Vishnu became a fish to save them. Another time, Vishnu became a boar to rescue the earth goddess from drowning in a great flood. And another time, Vishnu became Narasimha, a name that means man-lion, in order to vanquish an evil king who had been granted a wish that he could not be killed by any human or any animal. Vishnu became part man and part lion so that he would be neither human nor animal. Then he killed the king, restoring cosmic balance. Each of these 10 avatars has its own set of stories, and we could spend hours talking about them. But let's move on to the next sculpture. Here, we see the god Shiva. He's sometimes called the Destroyer because he's associated with the destruction of the universe at the end of a cosmic cycle. Because time is believed to be cyclical, however, Shiva also brings about renewal and creation. In this sculpture, made in southern India in the late 900s or early 1000s, he has 4 faces, looking in all 4 directions at once. Now, this sculpture used to be identified as another god, Brahma, who also has 4 faces, but more recent research suggests that the artists who carved it intended for it to represent a particular form of Shiva. Notice the 3rd eye in each forehead. This is an important feature of Shiva, one that we also see in the smaller bronze sculpture of Shiva nearby. When Shiva opens his 3rd eye, a fire emerges from it, destroying everything in its path to allow for new creation. But Shiva can be peaceful too, and in both sculptures at the DIA, he rests calmly. So along with Vishnu and Shiva, the 3rd major deity is the great goddess called Shakti or Devi. She too has many forms and many different names. This sculpture represents a type of fierce goddess known as a yogini, and it was made in southern India in the 900s, or perhaps in the late 800s. In both temples and religious texts, yogini goddesses are found in large groups, and they manifest the divine energy of Shakti collectively. They can be dangerous and threatening, but they can also bestow desirable powers upon people who worship them. The great goddess has numerous fierce forms like this yogini, but she has many peaceful forms too, like the goddess Parvati. Within the vast Hindu pantheon, Parvati is wife of the god Shiva. She is considered to be very auspicious, and believers pray to her for blessings. This sculpture, made in the 1200s in southern India, would have once belonged to a temple dedicated to Shiva. Now, I mentioned earlier that metal sculptures like this one were made for festival processions. This sculpture of Parvati would have gone on procession with her husband Shiva, along with other gods and goddesses of their temple. Through these portable sculptures, gods and goddesses can leave their temples temporarily, making themselves accessible to people outside the temple's walls. The video in the gallery next to this Parvati shows clips from this kind of procession. The processional sculptures are placed in large chariots, which make their way throughout the city. Notice the metal rings at the base of the DIA's Parvati sculpture. These would have accommodated rods used to secure her in place within a chariot. When the gods and goddesses are on procession, you can hardly see the surface of the sculptures that embody them. They're almost completely covered in cloth, jewelry, and flower garlands. Remember, adorning a devotional sculpture with beautiful clothing and jewelry is one way to honor the god or goddess that the sculpture embodies. When she went on procession, this Parvati would have similarly been covered from head to toe, like the sculptures in this photo are. Barely any of the sculpture as we see it today would have been visible, but that didn't stop the artists from representing clothing, jewelry, and other beautiful details within the sculpture itself. Parvati wears an elaborate crown, necklaces, earrings, bracelets, armbands, girdles, and anklets. And look at the way her hair falls neatly in spiraling curls against the back of her neck. I particularly love the detail of the textile pattern on her skirt. Perhaps now lost textiles from the 1200s would have looked like this. All the gods and goddesses in this gallery incorporate familiar features from the human world into their imagery. Their clothing, jewelry, and human-like bodies, idealized as they may be, are all recognizable and make them more accessible. In a temple, at a home, or on procession, Hindu sculptures make divinity tangibly present. In these settings, believers behold them with devotion, and the gods and goddesses look back, offering their sacred gaze through darshan. Within the museum gallery, these Hindu sculptures still invite a reverential gaze, but they also encourage other ways of looking. We can admire the skill of the artists who made them, or delight in aesthetic details such as the graceful curve of Parvati's arm or the intricate designs in her skirt. Whatever your background or beliefs may be, you can connect with these sculptures in your own way. Thank you for joining me today. I hope to see you soon at the DIA.